Okay, so let's get started. So, hi, once again, I'm Andy doing the emceeing. This is an interesting one because I'm emceeing, I'm also moderating this session, and then you'll have had enough of me. So, with that, I'd like to introduce our two presenters. So, Rick, if you could come on up, Rick Bruner from Viant, and Joey, if you could come up from JD.com. Come up and have a seat, and we'll get started in just a second. These two folks are really interesting because this ties into the role of first-party data. Both Rick and Joey work for companies that have massive, unique, differentiated first-party data assets. JD.com, by the way, is one of the biggest e-commerce sites in the world. They're interesting because they act as both a publisher and an advertiser. And Joey's going to go through some of the data that they're using. And then Rick is the head of research and analytics at Viant, which is owned by the parent company Time, you may have heard of. And they own a number of different companies in the space and a number of different data assets, and Rick's going to talk about that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers.
Thank you very much. So, thanks again. I am very happy to be back, not for the first time. I've been here at ICOM, I think I've missed one so far. And I'm here to talk to you about the rise of first-party data. I'm very glad that we've been hearing so much about this topic because this is really definitional to what Viant is. So, I'm just going to hit a couple of points that we're all familiar with quickly to just kind of restate the problem. The cookie is effectively dead. The cookie has served us relatively well over the last 20 years of internet marketing's history, but some statistics that you probably are already familiar with: more than a third of computers reset cookies. More than a third of computers reset cookies every month, and those that are resetting their cookies are resetting them at an average rate of 4 times per user of those who reset. And the result is the majority of all your cookies are ephemeral cookies, which clearly are problematic for measurement and targeting. Moreover, that's just in the environment of traditional laptop and desktop computers. Now, 2/3 of the devices that users are using to connect to the internet with, and we're speaking here about smartphones, obviously first and foremost, tablets, connected TVs, even browsers on computers like Safari don't support cookies in a traditional manner. And here's something you may not be aware of: the half-life of a list of targeting cookies. When you buy a list of targeting cookies from a DMP, is about 5 days before half of those cookies will never show up on the internet again. And it's just continuing to degrade at a rate day by day. And obviously cookies are not people, and they cannot be tied back with confidence to events that matter most to advertisers, such as offline sales. Hence, the rise of first-party data, or as we position the company I work for, Viant. Viant Technologies is a people-based advertising platform. Personal identities, unlike cookies, don't expire. Obviously, we don't need to make a joke about people do at some point expire, but they have, addressability up until then, and they cross devices, so the same person is using multiple devices. If we know the person, we can tie back that behavior, and we can also tie it back to those critical metrics such as offline sales, because people make purchases, not cookies. So I'd like to introduce you to Kate Anderson. Kate Anderson personifies Viant's people-based advertising approach. So Viant, we changed our name. A few years ago, two years ago, we were better known as Specific Media. We've been in business for 18 years. And we acquired MySpace, the former social network giant, back in 2011. We reinvented what MySpace is. It's a destination entertainment site now that's doing just fine. But the key asset in that acquisition was the registration database of the historic MySpace. After cleansing that data, it's 1.2 billion person profiles globally. Our most active markets are the United States and the UK, where we have 250 million person profiles and over 100 million households in the United States and 25 million in the UK, 25 million person profiles in the UK. And against that, with the key, the primary key value being email address, we also have name, physical address, and many other attributes, but email address is much more persistent even than your mobile device IDs, which you're upgrading your phone every few years, but rarely your email address. We were able to append rich information from many data partners, Experian, Axiom, Epsilon. Many of these are US players, but for the grocery category, Nielsen, Catalina. We have auto data from both Experian and a company called Urban Science. We can match back to prescription fulfillment for pharmaceutical. And importantly, TV. We have a network of 10 million households that we get second-by-second TV viewership data via ACR, automatic content recognition from partnerships with TV manufacturers. All of that data is appended in these extremely rich person profiles, again, 250 million in the United States, against which we're able to do some extraordinary targeting and measurement and insights that are not capable without this kind of setup. And so briefly, I'm going to hit on a couple of examples, and I'm afraid I need to be brief, but here we go. So we've released in kind of the thought leadership realm a couple of papers recently, a series called Anatomy of a Shopper. We did a grocery category one, and we did an auto category for the US and an auto category for the UK recently. This and that's, yeah, the anatomy, and then the next one is the persuadables. So here's just one highlight from the anatomy. Knowing what cars people drive, millions and millions of cars that people drive in our data set, which we call an identity management platform. It's like a DMP, but an IMP. We did some analysis around what type of cars they drive, and then we could marry that to their CPG purchase behavior, their television consumption behavior, their internet consumption behavior, their retail purchasing. And here's an example where Walmart, their power customer, maybe not surprisingly, are pickup truck drivers. That's the category by driver category who spends the most at Walmart. Costco, on the other hand, the customer category that over-indexes there with cars are luxury car drivers. Quick show of hands, who here recognizes the name Erwin Efron? Oh, excellent, a goodly portion of you, and recency targeting. So he was the father of recency planning of advertising, and I don't have time to unpack all that, but suffice it to say, he was a lovely gentleman who passed a couple of years ago, and he's smiling in heaven to see this chart on the slide here, because it demonstrates what he built a lot of his career around was the point of recency targeting. Because of our people-based approach and our integration with data sets, in this case, the grocery data provider Nielsen Catalina Solutions, we were able to identify every household's individual purchase cycle for a given category. So this is for a hot dog advertiser. And we did it also, and there's a paper, this is the persuadables, and actually we're expecting this to be in Ad Age today. We just released this paper, I have a teaser for it with me, so come ask me and I'll hand you this teaser. But what it found was that we could segment every household individually for their individual purchase cycle. So one household's purchase cycle for hot dogs may be every 5 weeks, another every 10 weeks. We defined early exposures of those ad exposures that reached people, the last ad exposure reached them in the first 80% of that cycle. So for the 5-week cycle household, the first 4 weeks versus the last 20% of that average cycle, so the last week. And we found that if you can reach people, this is the old axiom of reaching the right people with the right message at the right time, but really that's a lot of lip service in the cookie-based world. In a people-based world, we could know for households when the right time was. And by exposing them late in their purchase cycle, from when we can identifiably see they made their last purchase, we can double return on ad spend. So just to touch briefly on another couple of capabilities, and then I'll close out. So I mentioned, or I hope I mentioned, we were bought, I think I did not mention, but I think Andy queued it up. We were bought by Time Inc., the magazine company, largest magazine company in the world, People Magazine, Time, Sports Illustrated, Fortune, etc. We have all of their subscriber data also mapped to our IMP. And we have the TV data, so we're able to marry TV, digital, and print through to offline sales. And every time I come here, it wouldn't be ICOM if I didn't talk about random controls. I'll just speak real loud. We randomize controls, and here's the